So around 120 participants are there. Start करूया मला वाटतं.
Okay.
A very good morning, dear members. I, CA Karan Chandwani, on behalf of Pune branch of WIRC of ICAI, would like to welcome you for the webinar on recent amendments in 12A and 80G by our very own Central Council member, CA Chandrasekhar Chitle sir. We also have with us Chairman of Pune branch, CA Samir Ladda sir. Before proceeding with the session, I would request Samir sir to please give his opening remarks. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Karan. Our very own Central Council member, beloved CA Chitle sir, MOC Karan, and all the participants. Good morning and welcome to this seminar on 12A and 80G. As all of you know that there are a lot of amendments in registration and renewal of 12A and 80G. This is a very important topics, and every small and medium practice generally do have the work in 12A and 80G registration. So in my opinion, this is very crucial time to learn about the 12A and 80G, and there is we have expert speaker who is the chairman of directors committee and our own central council member CSC Chitre sir. Thank you CSC Chitre sir for giving your valuable time for this session. For further process, I wish you all happy learning. For further process, I hand over to Karan. Over to you, Karan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman sir. Before handing over the mic to Chitle sir, I would like to introduce him first. CA Chandrasekhar Chitle, practicing as a chartered.
I think that may not be necessary. Yeah.
So still as a.
That may not be much necessary. Just Central Council member. Yeah. But make it small.
Yeah,
short.
Chitre sir actually don't need any introduction for any Pune members,
yeah.
but it is a formality. So Karan, within short span.
Just in brief, I'll just give the introduction and then I can give it back to you. So he's a senior partner at CV Chitle and Company and member of the Central Council, as we all know, for the year 2019 to 22. He's the chairman of Direct Taxes Committee and vice chairman Banking, Financial Services and Insurance Committee. Along with it, he's also member of various standing and non-standing committees of ICAI. He was the chairman of Pune branch of ICAI for the year 1988 to 89 and the vice president of Pune Chartered Accountants Society. For
Karan, I think you just not have that elaborate. Yeah.
With this, I would request Chitle sir to please start the session. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Karan. And I would like to share the screen. Just a minute. Now whether the slide is audible?
Yes, sir.
Is it visible? Yeah.
Yes, visible. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so good morning, everybody. On the first weekend of second lockdown, let us consume this time for the purpose of not only charity, but also advising the charity. The faculty which was supposed to deliver this lecture was not feeling well. Therefore, I was requested by chairman to fill in the gap. And that's how I am here to discuss the important provisions relating to registration of charitable institutions and also registration for eligibility under section 80G of the Income Tax Act. So the two sections that are under focus is section 12A and section 80G and the recent amendment with respect thereto. So friends, as you are aware that as far as these charitable trusts are concerned, thousands and lakhs of charitable trusts exist in India, and number of them are maybe more than a decade old or maybe 30 years old, 40 years old, even before independence. Since then, we are having these charitable institutions. For the cause of government and the enrichment of society that the charitable trusts are paying, they are spared from levy of income tax. Of course, whenever any institution is spared from levy of income tax, it is but natural for the income tax department to really test whether the cause for which it has been created has been furthered by that particular enterprise or not. And depending upon this particular examination, the eligibility for continuation of this exemption is accorded. Now, what happens in the recent past, maybe 2-3 years, the assessing officers are asking to furnish their registration certificate under Income Tax Act, granting them exemption. Now, these charitable trusts are age-old. At times, there is change of hand at the helm of the affairs. Maybe trustees are different, chairman is different. And then at times, the record is not maintained that meticulously. And therefore, number of charitable trusts were finding it difficult to locate their original certificate for registration under Income Tax Act. They also tried frantically to get such registrations from the Office of the Commissioner of Income Tax. They tried to write to higher ups, principal commissioners and everybody. But to their surprise, even the Income Tax Office was not having copies of such registration, and certain difficulties were felt. So a representation was made that why not allow re-registration to all the charitable institutions so that they will have these registration certificates. And maybe if these registration certificates are given on electronic format, then there may not be any reason for misplacement, but they will be stored on computers and digital mode so that it will be a permanent record. So accepting this particular request, the Central Board of Direct Taxes made certain changes, or the finance bill was incorporated with the changes, and then the bill was passed. That was into Finance Act 2020. However, as you are aware, that by the time the Finance Act became operative, there was advent of COVID-19 pandemic, and this particular pandemic really shattered the normal life of all human beings, not to say about the taxpayers and charitable institutions. Therefore, by another legislation, this particular requirement of re-registration, new process of registration, which was to commence from 1st April 2020, was put on a hold. And thereafter, it was by a separate act relating to removal of difficulties, etc. This particular process has now been reinitiated from 1st day of April 2021. So we are, and what the new requirements are there for the purpose of this registration of charitable institutions. Now, coming to this particular subject, I'm also requested to touch upon the taxation of charitable trust, maybe in brief. So I'll have this itinerary for our discussion. Taxation of charitable institutions, we will discuss in brief. Then we will consider the procedural requirements, law relating to registration of charitable institutions. These charitable institutions also include public religious institutions, which also enjoy this exemption. Then deduction for donations, a new law has been incorporated under Section 80G. Then new law on eligibility under certain other sections like maybe 10, 23C, 35. Those also we will briefly touch upon, and the issues which participants have to raise. Maybe Karan or Samir can deal with these issues so that we can take it up. So friends, as far as this taxation of charity is concerned, Supreme Court has gone on record to say the word charity connotes altruism through an action. It involves an idea of benefiting others rather than to oneself. Functioning of such institutions plays a significant role in promoting economic development and social welfare objective of the government. That is the reason that the exemption is given. Of course, formally for the purpose of Income Tax Act 1961, as you are aware, the charity is defined in section 2 subsection clause 15, and whenever we go in for this exemption, the charity will have the meaning as is codified in the particular section. So particularly relief of poor, education, medical relief, and then there are certain limbs which have been added and subsequent processes like environment, preservation of monuments, etc. Those also come into play. So whenever we are applying for registration of a charitable institutions, no doubt that one will have to really consider whether the objects fit into any of these facets which are covered in section 215, and they do not travel beyond this particular definition as is given in section 2 clause 15. So for conferring benefits to the society, the government has offered various tax incentives as exemption to eligible charitable institution. To examine eligibility, process of registration has been there since long, and Finance Act 2020 had changed the law for registration of charitable institutions. However, as I said earlier, it was put on a hold because of pandemic, and now once again from 1st April 2021, this new law for registration has come into being. Now, as far as this taxation of charity is concerned, these are the sections which deal with various provisions relating to granting exemption for charitable trusts and institutions. Of course, whenever we say charitable institutions, it is not only confined to charitable trusts, but the benefit is also available to the companies registered under section 8 or section 25 of the Companies Act. Then societies which are existing for the purpose of this charity, then there are certain deities. So all these forms of organization collectively called as charitable institutions are eligible for this particular exemption. So basically these exemptions are contained in particularly section 11 and section 12. Then there are certain provisions if they are not followed, or if the benefit goes to certain persons who are not at arm's length, then in that case, the benefit of exemption is denied, and such cases are taken or enumerated in section 13 of the Act, and section 12A, 12AA, and 12AB are procedural sections for the purpose of compliance and for the purpose of enabling assessment of those charitable trusts by the income tax authorities to ensure that whatever law which has been laid down in section 11, 12, 13 and other provisions of the Act have been followed with. Basically, if you consider section 11 has a prescription that whatever amount you receive or whatever income which is earned for the property held under charity for charitable or religious purposes shall be exempt from income tax. And for this purpose, the prime condition which has been laid down is whatever income has been derived from the property held for charitable or religious purposes, at least to the extent of 85% is spent for the purpose and not more than 15% is accumulated for this purpose. So if you have collected 1 crore rupees as an income from the property, then minimum you will have to spend 85 lakh rupees or more. And if you spend this amount, the entire income of 1 crore rupees of the charitable institution shall be beyond taxation. Of course, in this case, it is as far as this donations are concerned, donations are of two types. One is you receive those donations or contribution in a normal course of pursuing activities. So whenever you are carrying out any activity, maybe for the purpose of this redressal of pandemic, maybe you are collecting donations to establish a hospital or to give medical assistance. So for this purpose, you will keep on receiving donations. For education, you will be receiving donations. And then there are certain capital expenses for which also you may solicit donation, or the donor may be giving you this donation not for recurring purposes, not for current meeting current expenses, but for long-term basis for certain meeting certain capital expenditure, which is popularly called as corpus donation. So maybe in case of an educational institution, they want to expand their building, they want to construct a laboratory or a library, and they may solicit donations for this, for the corpus of the trust, or some donor may just give donation for the corpus of the trust and not for revenue expenses. Clause D of subsection 1 of section 11 specifically provides that income from voluntary contribution made with a specific direction that they form part of corpus of the trust or institution shall be exempt from tax. So for the purpose of calculating this 85%, 15% formula, one is not required to include in the income the amount of donation which is received to the corpus of the trust or institution in respect of balance income. And this income may not be only confined to donations or voluntary contributions. It can be by way of any activity of the charity, like maybe if you have placed deposits, you may be earning interest. If there are certain premises available with the charitable institution, the rent may be collected. If charitable institution is having, say, agricultural land, they may also sell agricultural produce. Or it is possible that some business is run in furtherance of objects of the charitable trust. Say, for example, in case of some charitable trust which is existing for the purpose of empowering women folk, maybe in rural area or urban area. So they may train the women folk for the purpose of producing certain food items, or maybe stitching, or some other bamboo work, etc. So whatever articles or food grains or food stuff they produce through these women folk, maybe they will sell for the purpose of meeting two ends. So you will be having such income from small activities also. In case of educational institutions, in case of hospitals, it is not necessary that to all you have to charge in a concessional manner, but whatever charges you make as education fees or as medical fees, that also forms part of your income. So in sum and substance, you have to consider entire income excluding the corpus donation and apply this formula of 85% expenditure and 15% retention. Now, it is possible that in a particular year, you may not be able to spend 85%. So having collected 1 crore rupees, you are required to spend 85 lakh rupees. But supposing out of this 1 crore rupees, you receive 30 lakh rupees at the fag end of the year, maybe you receive on 15th of March or 20th of March, or maybe you receive even in December, and you are somehow not able to spend this particular amount. Or it is possible that you have received 1 crore rupees, there are certain purpose for which you want to spend, but that purpose is not getting crystallized. Say you want to give donation for a particular trade fair or participate in a trade fair to place your products for the sale, but that trade fair gets postponed, etc. So there may be various reasons for which, although you want to spend certain amount, you are not able to spend. So in this case, explanation has been provided to section 11(1) itself. It says that if any charitable institution is not able to spend minimum of this 85%, and the shortfall is for any one of these two reasons. One, for the reason that the trust was not able to collect the amount or the income which was derived, or B, for any other reason. So it is possible that you have placed a deposit in bank, you have given premises on rent, or you have sold products on credit, and you are not able to realize. So for any of these two reasons, if you are not able to spend up to 85%, then explanation to section 11(1), explanation 1 states that maybe you can spend for the purpose of objects of charity, in case where you have not received the whole or part of the income in the year in which you receive such income, or in a year immediately subsequent such year, and in any other case which is not the former case, that is for want of receipt, so much of the income is applied for such purposes in India during the previous year, immediately following the previous year in which the income was derived. So these two options are available under section 11(1) itself. And for this purpose, in order to exercise this option, one has to file form number 9A on or before the due date for filing return of income by the charitable trusts. Then the section also provides, section 11, that it is possible that you sell some capital asset of the charitable institution and you collect certain money. So whenever any capital asset is sold and the funds are generated, there also it is stated that in order to place this gain beyond the tax limit, you have to invest in other capital asset or you have to place deposits, etc. And then if you do so, to the extent you have placed purchased capital asset or placed any deposit in bank or made any investment, the capital gain is not subjected to any taxation. While computing income, earlier the stream provisions result into disallowances or not considering your application of charity if certain amounts for repairs, renewals, etc., which exceed the limits prescribed under section 194C, etc. So where tax is required to be deducted at source from any outgoing, and you are not deducted at source, then that outgo or whatever outflow is there, that will not be considered as application for the purpose of charity. Again, in case of expenditure which is paid otherwise than through banking channels, and for normal business income, you have disallowance under section 48.3, 48.3A. So these disallowance also get attracted where the charitable trust is not making payment by way of cash through the banking channels and making payment through cash in a simple manner. Then in case of capital assets, wherever it is possible to claim expenditure on capital asset itself as an application for charity. So maybe you have collected 1 crore rupees during the year as voluntary donations, income, etc. And maybe you have purchased assets of 60 lakh rupees. So in normal case for a business, that 60 lakh rupees won't qualify for deduction. But in case of charitable institutions, this 60 lakh is also considered as an application for charity and deduction is available. But in some cases, the charitable trust where in capital asset, say maybe they purchase ambulance for 20 lakh rupees. In the year of incurring of expenditure, they will claim deduction of 20 lakh rupees, and thereafter annually even depreciation was claimed, and some of the courts upheld their contention. So now the specific provision has been made that whenever you are incurring any capital expenditure, deduction on account of depreciation will not be available if you have claimed expenditure for capital purpose itself as an application for charitable purposes. So in short, double deduction has been denied. Then certain courts have also held that supposing in a particular year the collection was 1 crore rupees and the trust has spent say 1 crore 30 lakh rupees in the year, say year 1, and year 2 the trust has again income of 1 crore rupees and it could spend only say 60 lakh rupees. So whatever excess expenditure which has happened in an earlier year, excess than the collection, so 1 crore rupees collected, 1 crore 30 lakh rupees spent. So this 30 lakh rupees was added to the expenditure of a subsequent year, and in that year 60 lakhs plus 30 lakhs, so 90 lakh rupees was considered as an application for charitable purposes, and accordingly the taxation was made or the exemption was granted. Now this particular facility which was made available through court judgments, though not expressly through the law, was allowed. But now an explanation has been added that in a year while computing application for charitable purposes, if there is any excess expenditure over income of for earlier years, this excess expenditure will not be considered as application in any subsequent year. So this also has to be taken into account. And again, in case of corpus donation, or in case of any application out of loan, these two expenses will also not be considered as application for charitable purposes. So if corpus donation is received, say the expenditure is made out of corpus donation received, that expenditure will not qualify for as application for the purpose of calculating 85%, because you will appreciate that even that corpus donation income. the principal to spend 11 the adequate amount under this particular out of your income, and that is not for the reason that you are not able to spend, but you want to accumulate it and maybe accumulate certain big amount of money and spend it for a purpose. So annually your collections are say rupees 10 lakh, you are required to able to spend say 4 lakh rupees, and 6 lakh rupees are remaining balance. So the trust decides that we want to purchase an ambulance which costs say 20 lakh rupees. So within 1 year's income, it may not be possible for the charitable trust to purchase that ambulance and use for its objects. In that case, it will have to accumulate its income. So this accumulation is also made possible under subsection 2 of section 11, that if your desirous of accumulating any future, then that accumulation is also considered as application for charitable purposes. So it's where you have spent 4 lakh rupees and not spent 6 lakh rupees. Say you accumulate 5 lakh rupees formulation of 5 lakh rupees, expenditure will be consideration of 10 lakh rupees and exemption. For the purpose of such accumulations under subsection 2 of section 11, there are further conditions. Condition number 1 is this particular decision of accumulating under section 11 subsection 2 needs to be communicated to the income tax department on or before furnishing the due date for furnishing of return of income, and a form number 10 is prescribed for this purpose. And you have to prescribe. Okay, what I'll do, I'll just change my location because the internet connection is not stable. So I'll reconnect from some other location so that maybe my voice is more clear.
Sir, we'll wait a few minutes by the time you do that.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Now I think it would be better audible. So about section 10 subsection 2, the accumulations, these can be made by filing form number 10 on or before the due date for the purpose of furnishing of return in respect of accumulation out of a particular year. So in a case which we were discussing, 10 lakh rupees income, 4 lakh expenses, 5 lakh rupees accumulation maybe for 3-4 years. So this form will have to be filed for all the 3-4 years and not merely for first year. Condition number 2, this accumulation is not possible for a period exceeding 5 years. So in year 1, if you want to accumulate, you can accumulate up to year 6, and within this period of 5 years, you will have to incur expenditure. So similarly, in case of year 7, year 3, it can go up to year 8. So this 5 years timeline is mandatory. Thirdly, as far as this amount which has not been expended for the charitable objectives and accumulated needs to be kept, and certain investments which are given in subsection 5 of section 11. So it cannot be used for any other purposes in the intervening period, but they should be placed in various investments which are given in subsection 5. So friends, these were some of the important provisions, and the most important provision for the purpose of claiming exemption is one will have to file a return of income on or before the due date for furnishing of return under subsection 4A of section 139. So each charitable institution will have to file a return of income on or before the due date. If the due date is missed, then in that case, the charitable institutions will lose its exemption under section 11 and 12, and it is very harsh. But then, considering strict enforcement of law, this particular provision has been enacted. So all charitable trusts will have to mind that they file their return of income on or before the due date. It is experienced that in case of number of Ganpati Mandal trusts which wake up only at the time of next festival. Once the festival is over, they do not take much care for the purpose of maintaining their accounts and submitting the return of income. In case of such institutions, it will be very difficult for them to survive. So this particular aspect needs to be borne in mind by all those who are associated with charitable institutions and the professionals who are advising the charitable institutions. Then section 12 states that any voluntary contribution received by the trust created wholly or for charitable or religious purposes or by the institution established for such purposes shall be considered as income derived from charity. So even if you have received, say, voluntary contribution, it cannot be held that this is not an income, because section 12 specifically provides that whatever donations or voluntary contributions you receive shall also be considered as income. And lastly, section 13 tells us that if the monies of charitable institutions are spent on objects for the benefit of those who are associated with the trust, like trustee, etc., or they are invested otherwise than under section prescribed under section 11.5, where most of the government institutions are permissible to hold this investment. So whenever there is breach of these conditions, the exemption available under section 11 and 12 will be withdrawn. So this is in sum and substance the theme for taxation of charitable trusts. Then, in order to ensure that this law relating to charitable trust has been meticulously followed by charitable institutions, section 12A lays down certain conditions. Those are 3 conditions. Condition number 1 is that the charitable institutions which claims a benefit of exemption under section 11.12, it will have to be compulsorily registered with the income tax commissioner. So on number of occasions, it is noticed that the charitable institutions are created and they are registered under Maharashtra Public Charitable Trust Act, or formerly Bombay Public Charitable Trust Act, and then they are not registered with the Commissioner of Income Tax. So in this case, maybe it is a valid charitable institution. However, it will not enjoy exemption under section 11 for the simple reason that the law provides under section 12A that if you are a charitable institution which is not registered with the income tax department, then you will not be able to enjoy these exemptions. So registration of charitable institutions with the income tax department, with the Commissioner of Income Tax, Principal Commissioner of Income Tax, as the case may be, is mandatory. And this process of registration has been laid down in section 12AA, and this process of registration under section 12AA has concluded. Its tenure has been over on 31st day of March 2021, and the new process of registration has been enacted under section 12AB, which is operative from 1st April 2021. So today is 20th day that Section 12AA is not on statute and Section 12AB is on statute. So any charitable trust or institution which wants to claim exemption will have to get itself registered under Section 12AB. That is the prescription of Section 12A. Incidentally, if the charitable institution is already registered under 12AA, then in that case also, this new regime of 12AB requires re-registration of that particular charitable institution, and which we will discuss when we are on Section 12AB. Then second condition under Section 12A is, whenever a charitable institution is claiming exemption, if its income without considering exemption under Section 11, 12, etc. exceeds the maximum limit which is not liable to tax in case of such an entity, then accounts of such charitable institution should be audited by a chartered accountant, to state it simply, as is defined under Section 288A of the Act. And third condition relating to this particular as stipulated by 12A is, as I stated earlier, the return of income of the charitable institution must be filed as prescribed under Section 139(4)(a) of the Act, and Section 139(4)(a) requires the trustee or the person who is in receipt of income for the cause of charity or on or before the due date, and the due date is prescribed under Section 139(1). So generally, in case of company or in case of a trust, one will have to consider what is the, in case of company it is nil, in case of others it may be 2,50,000 or it may be nil depending upon circumstances. So where the income, gross income exceeds this particular amount, then audit is mandatory. Then the due date will be generally 30th day of October of the assessment year. So on or before that date, one will have to file the return of income in order to ensure that the benefit of section exemption under Section 11 and 12 is available. Then let us just practically try to amplify these provisions which we discussed. Say in case of a charitable trust A, donations received are 70 lakh, corpus donation 30 lakh, bank interest 1 lakh. So aggregate receipts are 1 crore 10 lakhs. Expenses on object are 50 lakhs, administrative expenses are 5 lakh, ambulance of 15 lakh is purchased, and depreciation of 3 lakh is available on ambulance as maybe for part of the year. So this is the case, then what will have to be done? So what is the gross income of this charitable trust? The gross income will be donation received 70 lakhs and bank interest 10 lakhs. So it would be 80 lakh rupees because corpus donation is not included in receipts. So out of 80 lakh, it can accumulate minimum 15%. So it is 12 lakh rupees which it can accumulate, and balance 70, minimum 68 lakh rupees should be spent. So expenses on object is considered as application. Administrative expenses is also application. So 55 lakh rupees is an application, and ambulance purchased. So there is an option, either you consider ambulance purchased as an application or depreciation on ambulance as an application. Now in this case, any alternative is all right. If we consider ambulance purchased as application, the aggregate expenditure will be 50 plus 5 plus 15. So 55 plus 5, 60 plus 70. So 70 lakh rupees is application, and minimum application required was 68 lakh rupees. So it will qualify for exemption. If you take depreciation as deduction, then it falls short of 68 lakh rupees. In that case, one will have to accumulate the income under Section 11(1). Or under subsection 2 of Section 11, and then only the institution will qualify for exemption. Otherwise, the exemption will be forfeited. In a second case, the corpus donation is the income is same, expenses on object is less 35 lakh rupees. So we can have the similar calculation, and here it falls short of minimum 85%. So it will be exposed to tax. Exemption will be forfeited unless accumulation request is submitted with the income tax department, either under subsection explanation 1 to Section 11(1) or subsection 2 of Section 11. Then in this case, even fixed deposit for 5 years, that is considered as application for the purpose of charitable objects, because it is capital expenditure. And in this case, while considering the gross receipts, although the gross receipts are 70 lakhs plus 30 lakhs plus 10 lakhs, so 1 crore 10 lakhs, out of which agricultural income is not liable to tax under the Income Tax Act. Therefore, while considering exposure to tax, this 30 lakh rupees will be excluded. Of course, as far as agricultural expenses are concerned, those also will be excluded, and accordingly 70 lakhs plus 10 lakh will be considered as income. We have seen under subsection 1A of section 11, whenever any capital receipt is received in the shape of, say, capital gain. So this sale of old vehicle is 10 lakh and you have purchased new vehicle of 20 lakh rupees. So entire capital gain can be considered as exempt. And also part of it can be considered as spent out of your other voluntary contributions or other income. So that way it can be addressed. Then here the itinerary is same, only they have created reserve for new vehicle. So mere creation of reserve for new vehicle, as is stated in serial number 7, is not an application. But if you want to consider that as an application, one will have to file form 10 if you are going to accumulate under section 11.1, 11.2 and spending subsequent year, or explanation 1 to section 11.1 for the purpose of application in a subsequent year. Then only this particular reserve can be considered as an expenditure. Otherwise, the reserve is not an application for the purpose of calculating income. Then in this case, corpus donation of 1 crore 30 lakh rupees is received. So if it is invested, then it will be considered as tax exempt. If it is not invested, then maybe for the purpose of this WP for construction of building can be considered as an application. And even if advance is given for the purpose of construction, that also can be considered as application. And one more provision in section 11, that if trust gives donation to another trust, that will be considered as application only if it is not a corpus donation to that another trust. So whatever corpus donation to another trust of 10 lakh rupees is given will not qualify for exemption. So that will not be considered as an application of charitable trust, and accordingly the income will have to be calculated. So friends, these were some of the examples just to bring home what is the manner in which this section 11 operates for the purpose of claiming exemption. Now coming to registration, we have to consider what are the procedural requirements. The procedural requirements and eligibility to claim exemption are given in section 12A. First is registration. Secondly, it is audit under section 12A. And lastly, it is furnishing of return of income. All these three conditions we have considered earlier, so I will not repeat them. Then when we consider the new procedure for the purpose of registration, as we have discussed, this new procedure of registration was originally enacted by the Finance Act 2020. However, subsequent advent of this COVID-19 pandemic, it was required to be kept on hold, and therefore this particular provision was not made operative. Otherwise, it was operative from 1st April 2020. Thereafter, we had taxation and other laws relaxation and amendment of certain provisions Act 2020. So this relaxation from operation was given, and then this particular enactment said that whatever is prescribed under this Finance Number 2 Act 2020, as far as registration of charitable institutions is concerned, that shall be operative from 1st day of April 2021. So now these provisions relating to registrations are operative, and we are going to discuss these new provisions. In a budget speech, while presenting this law in 2020, the finance minister said, further, in order to claim tax exemption, the charity institutions have to be registered with the Income Tax Department. In past, the process of registration was completely manual and scattered all over the country. In order to simplify compliance for the new and existing charitable institutions, I propose to make process of registration completely electronic, under which a unique registration number URN shall be issued to all new and existing charity institutions. Further, to facilitate the registration of new charity institutions which is yet to start their charitable activities, I propose to allow them provisional registration for 3 years. So this is what the finance minister has said. So now hereafter, each charitable institution shall be allotted a unique registration number URN electronically. As far as this registry is concerned, it will not be scattered over all commissionerates, but there will be a unified registry maintained electronically across the country. So for the whole of our country, there will be only one register which will be available, and one will be able to really ascertain what are all charitable institutions enjoying the registration and qualifying for exemption under section 11 and 12. Of course, whenever the new charitable institution starts, it is required to get registration. So present experience is that maybe you constitute a charitable institution, maybe a trust, society, or a company, and thereafter you apply for registration. And it takes months together to get the registration of such charitable institutions. And by the time this registration comes, the enthusiasm of those who constituted this charitable institution evaporates. And really it becomes a non-starter. So number of charitable institutions, they get established, but they do not start any work, because that enthusiasm is really marred by the inaction on the part of income tax department. So this particular aspect is also addressed by this new registration process. And there the finance minister has said that I propose to allow these new institutions a provisional registration for 3 years. And this particular part of provisional registration has also been enacted in the new section. Now this procedure, which is made operative, is announced by notification number 19/2021 dated 26th March 2021. Here I will take a pause and just mention about the CBDT and dialogue of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. After assuming charge of this direct taxation committee as a chairman, immediately I have written to the Central Board of Direct Taxes. There was one reservation or allegation by the CBDT and the Finance Ministry that the ICI is the institution which is interested only in applying for extensions and nothing more. So always, if there is a due date of tax audit, if there is due date for furnishing ITR, etc., the ICI was making representation in the interest of membership. But that really eroded the image of ICI in the esteem of this particular CBDT and the Finance Ministry. So why we claim extension? It is not because, and they also contended that the chartered accountants are insufficient in number, that they are able to cope up the workload of this particular tax audit. So why not consider other professionals also for conducting tax audit? And similarly for GST, they already allowed other professionals. So in order to ensure that we are not required to apply for extension, what we did is immediately on assuming charge, I have written a letter to the Central Board of Direct Taxes chairman, and I also had a meeting with member CBDT and requested them that whatever ITR forms are there, whatever tax audit report form is there, whatever changes you want to make, by 1st of April or maybe in first week or second week of April, you release all those forms so that there would be timely compliance by the stakeholders and by the chartered accountants, whether responding to this particular appeal or otherwise. Because there we also said that if you find that there is any difficulty in accomplishing this task, as an ICI, as a partner in nation building, we offer our services, and you can really entrust job of maybe designing forms or maybe vetting those forms. And let me tell you that whatever ITRs which have been announced now under new software scheme, not under Java or earlier scheme, the new scheme is there. So those forms have been vetted by a team of chartered accountants, which was constituted. The CBDT shared those forms in the month of February, March with this particular team. And the team has pointed out whatever suggestions they wanted to make, whatever bugs were there. And maybe after addressing all those suggestions by the team of chartered accountants, now the ITR forms, tax audit forms have been all announced on 1st day of April 2021. And also, as far as these forms for registration of charitable trust are concerned, as you see from the screen, on 26th day of March 2021, this was announced. So I think this is a proactive step the CBDT is taking towards compliance. So we also have a responsibility to responding and complying in respect of all the assessees within the given time limit, so that we are not required to make application for the purpose of extension. And really, as a professional, the professionals are not paid on time basis, they are paid on performance basis. So if you are making registration of a charitable institution or furnishing ITR, when you furnish ITR, you will get the fees paid. Whether you furnish it within 2 months or within 6 months, ultimately your fee remains the same. It is not paid on time basis, it is paid on performance basis. So for us also, it is more important that we complete at the shortest possible time, of course, without impairing accuracy, then profession also will be enriched. So coming back to this registration, the source of law is given in this notification, which has inserted certain rules, and those new rules and new forms are approved, and we are going to consider them. So what are the key changes in new registration process or key objectives? So that have been listed out. There is a need to improve with the advent of technology and removal of practical difficulty in obtaining registration before actually starting the activities. So both, as I stated earlier, the process was manual. Now we have the income tax department is going digital, so that needs a change. And secondly, the new charitable institutions which are constituted should be able to commence their functioning seamlessly without much expense of time. So that is one objective. Secondly, to make the process completely electronic, under which 16-digit unit registration number URN will be allotted to all new and existing charitable institutions. Then secondly, under existing provision, registration once granted was really a permanent, maybe ATG or maybe section 12A. But now it is expected, or the law provides, that this registration will be operative once granted for 5 years and not more than 5 years. And thereafter, at the interval of each 5 years, the registration shall be renewed. What is the logic? The logic is, rather than involving the charitable trust with roving inquiries annually, at the interval of 5 years, they will be thoroughly tested for the purpose of compliances, and thereafter, new registration will be granted. So your assessment, really thorough assessment, will be at the 5-year interval rather than annual intervals. Then to ensure that conditions of registrations are adhered to for want of continuance of exemption. So continuance will depend upon the trust following whatever conditions are there relating to expenditure, relating to investment, relating to no benefit to trustees, etc. Then for having a non-adversarial tax regime and not conducting roving inquiry in the affairs of the exempt entities on day-to-day basis, or maybe as we call annual scrutiny. To facilitate registration of new charitable institutions, which is yet to start the activities, to allow provisional registration for 3 years. Because if your objects are as per section 215, what else one has to inquire? So give them registration immediately and test them for compliance after 3 years. And then cross-check the claim of donation by donor. So under section 80G, even bogus receipts were submitted. It was not possible for the assessing officer on each occasion to check whether the trust is in existence, whether the certificate is appropriate, the receipt is not duplicate, etc., etc. So now this donation will not be a deduction under section 80G. For donation to charitable institutions will not be available on the basis of producing receipt from the charitable institution, but charitable institution receiving such donation will have to upload a return, like upload statements of TDS, and the credit for TDS is given on the basis of such statements uploaded. So charitable trust is expected to upload a statement. It is mandatory for them to upload a statement for all donations received. And then based on such statement uploaded, the pre-filled return of income form will show that, okay, you have the assessee has given donation of X amount to particular trust, and that trust is eligible for this granting such deduction. So this cross-check will not be, it will be automatic, and no process will be involved in cross-checking appropriateness of donation qualifying for deduction under section 80G. So these were the key objectives. Now coming to new law for registration, the new process for registration is applicable from April 1, 2021. The relevant sections that we have to understand are two sections, section 17, section 12A and section 12AB. Section 12A deals with the requirement of registration, which charitable institution has to apply for registration, and what is the time frame within which it has to apply for registration, and the form in which it has to apply for registration. Section 12AB in turn is the action on the part of Principal Commissioner of Income Tax or Commissioner of Income Tax, that after receipt of this application, what action he has to take, what verification he has to make, and what compliances or what certificates he has to issue about registration, or if there is refusal of registration, he has to issue the form giving the reasons. And Section 12AB also authorizes the Commissioner to withdraw the registration which has been granted for just reasons after affording opportunity of being heard to the charitable institution. As far as rule for the purpose of these forms is concerned, that is rule 17A, and the relevant forms to be furnished by the charitable institutions are 10A or 10B. It is not both, either or, one will have to furnish. And then you have certain other forms in which the registrations will be granted. The new law says, as far as section 12A is concerned, under clause AC, there are 6 alternatives or alternative conditions for the purpose of making application by charitable institutions. So if you fit in any one of these, any one of the 5 conditions, then the form and the time limit is given. And if you do not conform to any of the 5 conditions, then the 6th condition is a residuary condition, that in any other case, there also they have given some time limit and the form. So let us consider the time limit and the form for the purpose of applying for registration. Now here, as I said, these particular 6 alternatives are applicable for all the trusts which will be hereafter functioning or hereafter constituted, and all the charitable institutions which existed on 1st day of April 2021, whether they are accorded exemption or registration under section 12A or 12AB. So 12AA. So even if you are registered as a charitable institutions and you are enjoying this exemption, still this process of re-registration, or let us say registration, is mandatory. So the charitable institutions are divided into 5 baskets, and last one is a residual basket, where if none of the attributes given in clause 1 to 5 are applicable, then clause 6 would become applicable. So what is clause 1? It says where a trust or institution is registered under section 12A as it stood immediately before amendment by Finance Number 2 Act 1996, or under section 12AA as it stood immediately before it's amended by Finance Act 2020. So this is the first condition of existing trusts enjoying the exemption and which are registered. When they have to apply, they have to apply within 3 months from the date on which this clause has come into force. This clause has come into force on 1st day of April 2021. So 3 months will end on 30th of June 2021. So all the trusts presently enjoying exemption will have to apply within a time frame of 1st April 2021 to 30th of June 2021. The form prescribed for the purpose of such charitable institutions is Form 10AB. And as far as action by the Commissioner is concerned under section 12AB for granting registration or maybe refusing registration, the time frame is 3 months from the end of the month in which application is made. So if, let us assume that there is a charitable institution which is already enjoying exemption under Income Tax Act under section 1112, because it is registered under section 12AA, it has the registration certificate. So in that case, such charitable institution shall make an application, and it makes application in the month of April. So it has made application within 3 months from the date this clause becoming applicable. Then as far as this principal commissioner or commissioner is concerned, he will have to grant registration or take decision of, say, not granting registration within 3 months from the end of the month in which application is made. So if the application is made in the month of April 2021, 3 months will end on May, June, and July. So 31st July 2021 will be the last date on or before which the commissioner will have to act and respond to this particular application by either granting it or refusing to grant. Then second basket, where the trust or institution is registered under Section 12AB and the period of the said registration is due to expire. Then in this case, let us assume that charitable institution is re-registered under 12AB, making application in April 2021, or it is a new charitable institution which has come into existence maybe in the year 2021 or in the year 21-22. Then in that case, it will be granted registration for 5 years. This 5 years will be for 21-22, 22-23, 23-24, 24-25, and 25-26. So on 31st March 2026, this registration shall expire. So in case of such a charitable trust, it will have to apply for re-registration because the registration is valid only for 5 years. So what is the time frame in which it has to apply? It has to apply at least 6 months prior to the expiry of such period. So the period expires on 31st March 2026. The 6 months prior to that, they commence from 1st October 2026. So they have to apply at least 6 months prior to the expiry of such a period. So 6 months time frame has to be given to the commissioner for the purpose of checking this. So by 30th of September 2025, the trust will have to apply, because thereafter within 6 months is validity for existing registration under Section 12AB will expire. So you get registration in the year 21-22. It expires in the year 25-26 on 31st day of March 2026. So at least 6 months prior. So by 30th of September 2025, such a charitable trust shall apply for re-registration. The re-registration shall be applied in Form 10A, and for the purpose of approval, the commissioner gets 6 months from the end of the month in which the application is made. So if you apply in the month of, say, August 2025, then 6 months from the end of August 2025, so that will be February 2026. So before February 2026, the commissioner will have to take decision. If you apply in September 2025, by March 2026, the commissioner will have to take a call on your application. Then where trust or institution has been provisionally registered under Section 12AB, then in that case, what is provisional registration? We shall come to it after we deal with these initial provisions. But at this juncture, it is sufficient for us to understand that we have seen earlier, the finance minister has stated that whenever new trust comes into existence, maybe it needs to be given expeditious registration. Earlier also it is seen that this expeditious registration has to be given to the new trust, and that provisional registration is valid only for 3 years and not more than 3 years. So let us assume that a new institution has been formed in the month of say July 2021. So once the institution has come into existence in July 2021, it will apply in due course of time within the due date for the purpose of registration, and then it shall be granted registration. So that will be available for the financial year 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24. So for 3 years, this registration will be available. So in such a case, this registration will expire after 3 years on 31st of March 2024. So such a provisional registration granted under Section 12AB will expire, and in case of such trust, at least 6 months prior to the expiry of period of provisional registration, or within 6 months of commencement of activities, whichever is earlier. So let us first consider the first limb within 6 months of expiry of registration. So as we have seen in earlier case with reference to 2026, the March ending. Here with reference to 31st March 2024, you will apply at least 6 months prior to the expiry of this period. So maybe by September 2023, the 30th day of September, one will have to apply, or maybe earlier to that, one can apply for re-registration. It is possible that the charitable institution has been incorporated and the provisional registration has been granted. Thereafter, the provisional registration may lapse, but the activities are not started. So in that case, you want to start the activities in such a case after expiry of this provisional registration, then maybe 6 months prior to commencement of activity, one will have to apply. This application shall be in the form 10A, and the commissioner gets 6 months from the end of the month in which application is made by the charitable institution for registration. Then number 4 is where registration of a trust or institution has become inoperative due to first proviso to subsection 1 of section 11. Section 1 subsection 11 is a newly inserted section. One will appreciate that there are certain charitable institutions, maybe in the field of education or having hospital, they qualify for exemption under section 11 section 12 or section 1023C as well, or certain other section subsections or clause of section 10. So concomitantly, they were entitled to claim exemption under section 11 or 12 or under section 10, maybe section 1023C or any other clause of section 10. And depending upon convenience, these institutions were claiming the exemption under either of the provisions. But now subsection 7 of section 11 provides that if a charitable institution is eligible for exemption under section 10 any clause or section 11, then the charitable institution will have to take a call whether it wants to claim exemption under section 1023C or any other clause of under section 10 or section 11 and 12. And once that option is taken, that clause will continue. The exemption under that section will be available, and the eligibility for exemption under any other section shall cease to operate. So let us assume that there is an educational institution eligible for exemption under section 1023C, also eligible for exemption under section 11 and 12. And then this particular educational institution opts for claiming exemption under section 10 subsection 23C. So it continues claiming such exemption, being eligible also for exemption under section 11-12, but now because of this provision, it will not be able to claim exemption under section 11 and 12. Now, going forward, they believe that, okay, rather than claiming exemption under section 1023C, it would be better to claim exemption under section 11 and 12 for certain reasons. So their exemption has been derecognized under section for section 11 because of their opting for exemption under section 1023C. So this is a case. So in this case, they want to shift their eligibility from one section to section 11 and 12. When they have to apply at least 6 months prior to the commencement of the assessment year from which the said registration is sought to be made operative. So for the financial year 21-22 and 22-23, the trust gets registration under section 1023C and continues it for subsequent year. But during 22-23, they believe that rather than claiming exemption under section 1023C, it is better to claim exemption under section 11. In that case, they will be allowed this particular exemption under section 11 for a subsequent financial year, that is the financial year 23-24. And for this purpose, before commencement of financial year 23-24, that is on 1st of April 2023, at least 6 months prior to this date, they will have to apply. So they will have to apply on or before this 30th of September 2022, if they claim only for 2022. If they claim for 2022, 2023, and want for 23 April onwards, then 30th of September 2022. It is possible that the trustees prepare their balance sheet, etc. And then in the month of say May 2023, they realize that they should have gone with the exemption under section 11. But in that case, this particular time limit is over. So now if they want, for the purpose of claiming exemption under section 11, even for the financial year 23-24, they cannot claim. Because if they want to claim exemption for the financial year 23-24, they will have to apply at least 6 months prior to the commencement of this financial year. This financial year has commenced on 1st April 2023, and say 2024, if we talk of 24-25, so the financial year has commenced on 2024, and they are in the month of April, May 2024. So if they want to alter their decision, that decision can be altered for a subsequent financial year and not for the current financial year, because before start of that financial year, at least 6 months prior to commencement, they have to apply for registration under section 11. For this registration, again, the form is 10A and 6 months time frame is given from the end of the month in which application is made to the commissioner to take decision on granting of registration or maybe refusing of registration. Then you have fifth alternative, where the trust or institution has adopted or undertaken modifications of the objects which do not conform with the conditions of registration. It is possible that a trust is constituted and then subsequently it wants to change its objects, or it enlarge its object, or maybe abandon some of the objects and take some new objects. So maybe the trust is started with an object of giving primary and secondary education, maybe 5-10 years ago. And now there is first batch which is qualifying for the purpose of say SSC or HSC, and they want to start college. In that case, unfortunately, if their object was stated that giving primary and secondary education, so they will have to modify their trust deed, or if it is a company, the memorandum of association, by saying that they want to give college education as well. Or if a charitable institution is established for the purpose of, say, giving education, and in a process they have also constituted a medical college. So thereafter they feel that when we have a medical college for the purpose of experiment to our students, maybe they can also have hospital. And when hospital is there, we can also consider pursuing the object of medical relief to the society. So they may want to modify the object which is not there in their trust deed or in the document creating the institution at the time when the registration was granted. So now you want to change the object by including certain more objects which were not there at the time of registration. Then you will have to once again apply for the purpose of registration. And for this purpose, the time limit is within 30 days from the date of adoption or modification. So this educational institution giving also medical education, they want to set up a hospital, so they want to take up additional object of medical relief. And they amend their say memorandum of association or the trust deed in the month of say 1st July 2021. So in that case, they will have to apply for registration even if they are registered, or if they are registered and the change take place on 1st July 2022. In that case, within 30 days from 1st July 2022, they will have to again apply for registration, for which Form 10A is prescribed. The approval is given within 6 months from the end of the month in which the application is made. So this is a case where you modify your trust deed, and particularly relating to object. Of course, if you modify the trust deed, supposing you have number of trustees 7, you want to make say 11, or if you want to change register office of a charitable trust and therefore you want to modify, or you want to amplify area of operation, if it is Pune district, you want to also have state of Maharashtra. So that doesn't amount to modification of objects. So therefore, whenever there is modification in a document which is submitted for registration, otherwise than in objects, it does not require re-registration because your object continue to be the same. And after considering these five baskets, if in none of these baskets your charitable trust is fitting, then this is any other case. And in case of any other case, at least 1 month prior to the commencement of the previous year, relevant to the assessment year in which the said registration is sought. So this is the time limit for application. So if you want registration for the financial year to commence from first, which is commencing from say 1st day of April 2023, then you have to apply at least 1 month prior to the commencement of the previous year. So if it is 1st of April 2023, you have to apply at least 1 month before. So on or before 1st of March 2023. Before that, you will have to apply for registration, and that form will be Form 10AB. And within 1 month, the Charity Commissioner shall take registration. And it will be appreciated that if you look at any earlier 5 provisions, all the provisions were generally in respect of those charitable institutions which were existing. And then the certain event took place, so there was necessity of making application once again for registration. So this is generally a case where you have created a charitable institution for the first time and you are applying. So when you are creating this for the first time and applying, generally it will go under this basket, and here you will be granted provisional registration without subjecting to much scrutiny. So friends, these were the 6 alternative cases which are prescribed under section 12A, along with the time limit and the form which is required to be submitted. And also we have considered under 12AB what time limit is available to the Charity Commission, to the Commissioner at Income Tax Department to grant this registration or take decision on registration, either refusal of it or granting of it. Now, moving forward, the application has to accompany with certain other documents. Briefly, we will consider those documents. These documents are elaborately also given at the end of the form, Form 10A and Form 10B. So where the applicant is created under an instrument, a self-certified copy of the instrument creating or establishing the applicant. If it is a trust, maybe trust deed or society bylaws or memorandum of association articles in case of company, etc. Where the applicant is created otherwise than under instrument, a copy of document evidencing creation of applicant. So there is no document relating to this creation of a trust, under which document you are created. Maybe under a will, a particular trust may be created. So there may be such solitary instances. So any document which has given birth to this institution needs to be submitted. Then copy of registration with the register of companies or of firms or society or public trust, that is required to be furnished. Of course, how register of firms has come, I wonder, because firm is an entity which is incorporated for the purpose of sharing profits. So it may not be possible for a charitable institution to be a firm. Then self-certified copy of registration under Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, if so registered. So if the trust is soliciting donations from countries abroad, then in that case, it cannot accept the donation unless it is registered under FCRA. So if it is such category of institution, FCRA registration also should be submitted. Then self-certified copy of existing order granting registration under section 12A, 12AA, 12AB. Of course, this will not be applicable in case the trust is a new trust. Then self-certified copy of order of rejection of application for grant of registration. So for certain reasons, the registration was refused. And then you are once again applying for this registration. So the copy refusing this registration, because their reasons would be available why the registration is refused. And just to address those reasons, this particular rejection order is also expected to be submitted. Then where applicant has been existing during any year or years prior to the financial year in which application for registration is made, self-certified copies of annual accounts of the applicant relating to say not more than 3 years immediately preceding the year in which the said application is made, for which such accounts have been drawn up. So accounts for last 3 years are required to be accompanied with this application. Where application is made, has profits and gains of business. So during the course of doing this charitable activity, in furtherance of objects, the trust is doing business. So account for the purpose of such business, accounts are required to be separately maintained. And if they qualify for audit under section 44AB, tax audit is also required to be made. So such copies of business under the charity is required to be submitted maximum for 3 years. Then where undertaking held by the under subsection 1 has existence during any year prior to the financial year in which application or registration is made, self-certified copies of annual accounts, similar requirement, and self-certified copy of documents evidencing adoption or modification of the objects, because at the time of creation you might have adopted, subsequently if there is a change, there has to be some document evidencing adoption or modification of objects that is required to be given, and also a note on activities of the applicant. So this is required to be given. Along with that, elaborate information about the trustees, etc. is also asked by the form. So in itself, form number 10A and 10AB, as the case may be, shall be furnished electronically, as we have seen that there is shift from manual processing to e-processing, and therefore, in case of this form for registration 10A or 10AB, it is compulsory that they shall be furnished electronically. And under digital signature, if the return of income is required to be furnished under digital signature, so if section 139 mandates the charitable institution to furnish return electronically with digital signature, then in that case, this form also should be digitally signed. And if it is not so required, then it may be signed through electronic verification by OTP code, etc. To be verified by a person authorized to sign the return under section 140. So section 140 gives list of persons who are eligible to sign return of income of a charitable institution. So those persons, or one of those persons, should sign this application for the purpose of registration. So this is again just a summary has been prepared, which we have all elaborately discussed. So let me skip this summary. Then deduction for donation. As we have seen that the law relating to donation has also undergone a change. There are two parts of a law. One is substantive and one is procedural. As far as substantive law is concerned, that is whenever you are making donation, certain donations which are made to certain Prime Minister Relief Fund, etc., qualify for 100% deduction. Other donations qualify for 50% deduction. There is qualifying limit in respect of certain donations to the extent of 10% of gross total income. All those conditions is a substantive law, and that continues. And we are not considering that law for the moment. We are considering procedural law. In case of procedural law, there are three changes mainly. One is the Income Tax Department and the Finance Minister has decided that they shall be giving pre-filled return. There is faceless assessment, and there is less and less interaction between the Income Tax Department and the taxpayers. And this is with a view to have non-adversarial tax regime. So to bring this into allowability or grant of deduction for donation under section 1080G, one more change has been made and one more responsibility has been cast on charitable institutions. And that responsibility is, say in case of tax deducted at source, whenever any tax is deducted at source, the person deducting tax has an obligation not only to pay that tax to the government exchequer, but also to furnish a statement of TDS that from whom he has deducted the tax, what is the amount, under which section, what is the TDS, when paid, the PAN number of the payee, etc. And based on this, the tax credit is given to the person from whose income the tax is deducted. So no separate verification is required about the receipt of TDS by the government or about eligibility to claim TDS by the payee. On similar lines, under section 80G, now the charitable institutions shall also be required to furnish a quarterly statement of the donations received by them from various donees. So that will include all that information about permanent account number, etc., about the donee. And once this particular information is uploaded, the donee will be eligible for deduction. If you refer to section 80G, earlier it said that if you give donation and give proof of donation, you will be granted exemption if the trust is an eligible trust. So on that receipt, they used to say whether the trust is eligible or not, and the deduction was given. Now this section 80G is also amended. It tells that the payee who is claiming deduction under section 80G will be eligible for a deduction if the charitable institution to which he has given donation uploads the statement, and under his name the amount of donation is reflected in form 26As. So it is now necessary for the purpose of donors not only to give donation but also to inform the donor, the donee, to properly file the statement and include his name, PAN number, etc. for the purpose of uploading that statement. Then only he will be eligible for this particular deduction. Of course, this procedural matter may also be challenged because, see, if I have given donation of 10 lakh rupees, and if there is failure on the part of that charitable institution to perform its obligation of uploading the return because of want of diligence on the part of charitable trust, why I should be penalized? So these issues can be raised before the courts, but for the time being, rather than going to court, it would be better that if we educate the charitable institutions and ensure that they upload our donors' names and PAN numbers and the amount, then the donors will seamlessly get the deduction. Now, it is not that if you are a charitable trust registered under section, say 12AB, you are accorded eligibility to accept donations which enjoy benefit of section 80G at the end of the pay. Particularly in case of religious trust, public religious trust, this particular benefit is not available. There are certain exceptions of institutions of national importance, but by and large, it is not given. Also, there may be certain charitable institutions who might not apply for this eligibility, and donation to those charitable institutions will not qualify for deduction under section 80G. So in sum and substance, the charitable institutions which wants to give benefit of section 80G to its donors, it will have to apply for an eligibility certificate from the income tax department. And this particular eligibility certificate, now there is no separate form. You have to again fill up form number 10 or 10AB, 10A or 10AB, and after you fill in that form in a similar fashion with similar accompaniments, you will be eligible for getting donations which are subject to benefit of section 80G. Of course, for this also, similar time limit has been prescribed so that before commencement of the financial year itself, you are aware that your donations have this particular benefit. Then whatever we discussed about registration is applicable for charitable trusts under section 11 and 12. Those charitable trusts which are enjoying exemption under those sections. But the charitable institutions also enjoy exemption under section 1023C. There are certain charitable institutions or certain institutions which carry out research, and universities or other research associates. And if any donation is given to them by the business enterprise or any person carrying on business, they also get 100% deduction for the donations made. But in order to qualify for accepting such donations which give exemption deduction under section 35 to the donors, this particular institution needs to have approval, and that approval is given by charity commissioner to the extent of their compliance under law. Of course, there is another requirement also by Department of Science and Technology. Their approval is also required. But when you have to apply for ultimate approval under the income tax law, you have to make application to the charity commissioner. Section 80G, just we discussed, we have to again apply. So even these applications for exemption under section 1023C, eligibility under section 35 or eligibility under section 80G, registration and re-registration process is there. Registration granted at one go is valid for 5 years, and thereafter it will be due for renewal. And all the other requirements which we discussed in case of charitable institutions under section 11 and 12, mutatis mutandis apply to all these three sections. And just to take view of various forms, so in case of registration for approval for scientific research institutions, it is form number 3CF, and one will have to refer to rule 5CDE and F depending upon various category of these research institutions. Then in case of form 10A, all these charitable institutions claiming exemption under section 10 or section 11 or eligibility under section 80G or eligibility under section 35, either form 10A or form 10AB, depending upon facts and circumstances of the case, these institutions will have to furnish. Timeline for furnishing also, we have seen earlier that same timeline applies. Then there is form 10AD, the order of registration or approval or rejection of or cancellation. So whenever the commissioner or principal commissioner takes decision on your application made under section 10A or 10B, form 10AD you will receive from the office of the income tax department, where order for registration or approval or rejection or cancellation is given. Rejection or cancellation is made after opportunity of being heard, but then a reasoning is given why it is rejected. Then we have form 10BD. It is the statement of particulars filed by reporting enterprise under section 80G5. As we have seen that the trust accepting donation giving benefit of 80G or benefit of deduction under section 35 will have to furnish to the income tax department. These are the names of donors and the permanent account number and the amount donated. So this return will have to be filed in form 10BD. And in form 10BE, a certificate of donation under section 80G will be available to these institutions. And this form, like if I deduct tax, I file TDS return, and based on my furnishing of statement, form number 16 or 16A generated. Similarly, under 10BD, once when you upload this return, this 10BE will be generated, and then this form 10BE should be given to the donors who will be able to claim deduction based on this form 10BE. So friends, these were the aspects relating to new law on registration of charitable institution under section 12A and new law for registration under section 80G, which I thought relevant for discussion. Incidentally, the same law applies for charitable institutions claiming deduction under section 10 and also to the research institutions allowing benefit of deduction under section 35 to its donors, and the institutions giving benefit of 80G to its donors. So friends, in a given time, I thought this relevant, and I thank Chairman Pune branch for affording me opportunity for having dialogue with you. If there are any issues, we can discuss. Thank you very much. And incidentally, if Samir, you can inform about the booklet that DTC is doing under Pune Group, maybe people will know that we are also coming out with booklet. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there are almost 52 queries, so it will be difficult to solve the queries in short time. So can we download this query and we will mail to all the participants the answers of these queries, because almost 56 queries are there.
What we will do, maybe sometime other we can have section, because writing that 56 answers would be also time consuming. If there are some, now it's another 20 minutes are available with us. So maybe important queries we can take up, and other queries we can think of answering them, so that rather than answering all the 56 queries, we can think of that. And also the group is constituted for this booklet. If that you highlight, maybe that group also can take up the balance queries. So maybe we will have once that group dialogue also for an hour or so in some subsequent session.
Okay, well, once
with the booklet, we will have that session also.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Once our first draft book is coming, then afterwards we will have a meeting with all the
right, and then we can have meeting with all these participants as well.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Karan, can you go through questions one by one?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There is also part
Do you
of
want me
the.
to read the queries, or like will you go through it, or what should how we do?
You can just ask whatever. I will also just open it, try to open, but you can ask whatever you consider important. I will also in the meanwhile go
Will
through.
do, sir. Will do, sir. I'll just go through. I'll just open the question and answer box.
In the meanwhile, I'll read first one from Abhishek Alizad. A trust which is registered under Section 12A undertakes amendment to object clause after 1/4/21 before applying for renewal. Will this situation attract A, renewal provisions, and B, will it attract new registration? Now, incidentally, what is happening, that trust is already registered under 12A and it exists on 1/4/21. So it will have to apply for re-registration under Form 12AB. In case of re-registration, the forms which are already there, the commissioner is not expected to do any verification, but within 3 months he will issue the certificate, so you will not be once again undergoing any process of scrutiny. But in other cases, the commissioner will undertake process of scrutiny, whether your trust deed is all right, whether you are complying with the regulations, and there is no breach of any other provisions of the law. And if he is satisfied, he will grant the registration. If it is not satisfied, he will reject the registration. So in first case, when it is just a renewal of registration, no scrutiny is there. But when you are modifying the one of the few objects, then in that case, there will be scrutiny whether those objects are in conformity with Section 2, Clause 15, charitable purpose. And for this purpose, there is a different form. So in my opinion, for re-registration, you will have to go in normal course. And for this modification, you can apply in 10A, where scrutiny will take place. Of course, this is a practical solution. Even if you apply only in Form 10A, that is sufficient, because once when the registration is granted, you will be able to perform your activities. But why finding of 10AB is also expected is because for 10AB there is no scrutiny. So even if there is delay, then you will be able to go ahead and your new objects will be tested within 6 months, and then you will be communicated the decision. Any further, Karan? In the meanwhile, you can check and you can take up
There is a query
similar.
from Krishna Gandhi sir, says, if trust is registered under Bombay Public Trust Act 1950 or Indian Trust Act having no registration under Section 12A of income tax, then in such case, if we filed income tax return, then ITR CPC is sending notice of 30% plus tax amount of whole income without allowing any expenditure. In such case, please guide that just not taking 12A registration has the trust lost its identity.
See, if you don't take 12A registration, you definitely are not entitled for exemption under Section 11, 12, 13, whatever. When you are not having exemption, you will have to pay tax. Of course, as far as donations are concerned, without allowing any expenditure, so what are the expenditure? If you consider the income tax law, expenditure incurred for the purpose of earning any income is allowed as a deduction. So for the purpose of earning donation, you don't have to incur any expenditure. Actually, expenditure is application of donation. Therefore, deduction for this expenditure out of donation may not be possible. And if one refers to provisions of Section 224 defining income, it includes any voluntary donations, contributions, etc. received by anybody as income. And now you have Section 56 also. Earlier it applied to individual HUF, now it applies to all persons. So under Section 56 also it becomes your income from other sources, and there is no expenditure prescribed for this particular source. But there is one more provision that assessment cannot be opened under Section 147. I will just check the section, merely because you have applied for registration. So protection is available in the form of this provision. I just check the section. In the meanwhile, you can. Yeah, I'll just complete it. If one refers to Section 12A, there is a proviso. That proviso says that provided also that no action under Section 147 shall be taken by the assessing officer in case of such trust or institution for any assessment year preceding the aforesaid assessment year, only for non-registration of such trust or institution for the said year. So, this proviso, second last proviso to Section 12A, also can be canvassed by such trusts. Yeah, next.
Yes, sir, a trust has received various investments in the form of shares, mutual funds, or insurance policy out of the will of a person. Now the investments are not getting liquidated due to the ongoing litigation. Whether the trust will be eligible for registration under Section 12A and 80G.
I think we will have to park this case, but as a primary reaction, earlier it was whatever is received as a donation. There is a one provision to liquidate it within 3 years. I will have to check whether it is applicable for this also. So maybe we will park it and respond subsequently.
Okay, sir. Should I move on to the next one?
Yes.
A charitable trust running school, total receipts are less than rupees 5 crore and claiming reduction under Section 11 under deemed registration being application for registration neither rejected nor granted. What you advise, should we claim under 1023 or
Sorry,
apply
not
for
audible. Who's query? I'll just
Sir Shubhada Kopa. She has asked.
education. I think voice is breaking. If you can repeat the.
So should I repeat the query?
Or hello.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Am I
I'm able
audible?
to hear you. Yes. Sir, a video is stuck, I guess, but you are audible. Now it is fine, sir.
Okay, you can repeat now the question.
Yes. I'll repeat the question.
Please repeat the question. Yeah.
A charitable trust running school, total receipts are less than rupees 5 crores and claiming reduction under Section 11 under deemed registration being application not granted or neither rejected. What would you advise? Should we claim under Section 1023 or apply for registration under 12A?
I think it is better to apply for 12A, particularly for schools, because what happens if the amount is not received, then there is also a explanation one available under section this 11(1) that you can spend in a subsequent year when you receive, and also certain other benefits are available. So I would prefer 11 section to section 1023C. And as far as this non-TDS is concerned, the disallowance will be 30% and not 100%, which is clarified by S.N. Puranik, sir.
Yes, sir. Next one is, if an institution decides to opt for 1023C instead of Section 11 and 12, will it be able to apply for 80G?
Yes, it will be able to apply for 80G. And that is given in the section also. Ultimately, it is a charitable institution, and this 80G application also lists out this eligibility. And we see number of educational institutions, hospitals granting 80G.
Okay, sir. From when return of donation is mandatory for trust? Is it from financial year 21-22? If yes, whether it is annual statement or quarterly exercise?
It is applicable from this financial year 21-22. And regarding periodicity, let me just come. Periodicity, I'll just come back. I think it is quarterly, but I'll come back on periodicity.
Yes, sir.
I can ask in the meanwhile.
Yes, sir. I'm just looking for the next question. Yes, sir. Should I ask the next question?
Yeah.
Trust into existence since last couple of years. However, not applied for registration under Section 12A and 80G as it was comfortable with exemption under Section 1023C. As gross receipts not exceed rupees 100 lakhs. Yes. Not got books of accounts audited. Now, with expansion and receipts, want to decide to apply belatedly for 12A and 80G on 31st of March 2021 for financial year 21-22. Whether IT department will consider it and allow for it, or it will allow for 2022-2023 instead of 21-22.
Sorry, I was looking at this 80G matter. What is the query?
I'll repeat it, sir.
Yeah, please.
Trust into existence since last couple of years. However, not applied for registration under 12A and 80G as it was compatible with exemption under 1023C. And did not get books of accounts audited. Now, with expansion and receipts, they wish to apply belatedly for 12A and 80G as on 31st of March 2021 for financial year 21-22. So whether the income tax department will allow or consider it for that year or allow 2022 and 2023 instead of the 21-22.
As far as this application for 11 is concerned, it will be allowed prospectively only. And now with the change in law, if you apply now, it will be applicable for the current year and onwards as you claim it. If you claim it for subsequent year, it will be granted from the 1st April 2022 onwards. And for the current year also, you can go with this application deduction under section 1023C.
Okay. Yes, sir. Going on to the next query. A trust running school and charging fees to students. Whether income by way of fees is business income. A trust which has developed intellectual property in certain field and it is making available the knowledge for earning consultancy fees liable for GST, whether this is a business income and liable for tax audit. And there is one more question in addition to this, whether the above incomes are to be considered as business income incidental to carrying the objects of the trust.
See, as far as educational institutions are concerned, that will be considered if they are enjoying exemption under section 1023C, then they will not be liable for tax audit because incomes are exempt. As far as section 11 is concerned, that also I believe that tax audit will not be applicable. And in guidance note on tax audit, if one refers, it says that if the trust is carrying on any business, so that may be incidental to their objects. If they are carrying out business, then this tax audit is applicable. So I take it that supposing if it is a hospital and that hospital is running a medical shop, perhaps income of that shop may be required to be subjected to audit, but not of the hospital or the primary educational institution.
So there is this next query. Application for registration was rejected. ITAT set aside it back to CIT in January 21. No actions taken by CIT till date. What will be the fate of this application? How compliance of new procedure is to be made?
Now one will have to apply once again. If the trust is not registered, if you take the view, then you can apply in appropriate form, I believe 10A, because your registration at the moment is not available and you are litigating it. So once the fate of litigation comes, maybe you will be eligible for re-registration. But till the time, you will also be hanging, there will be hanging sword whether for this year you will get or not. So at least for this year you can apply. But if you have not modified your objects or if there is no change, again, the decision which is taken earlier, one will have to canvass why it should be changed for this year when the facts are the same. So in my opinion, yes, they should apply for fresh registration because they at the moment are not having registration.
Sir, moving on to the next query. In the last year, that is 2020-2021, one of the client, which is a Section 8 company, has taken 12A and 80G registration. The question is whether renewal of this registration is required in this year.
Yes, required. Everybody who is having registration and either 80G or 12A, for everyone re-registration is mandatory. That is to be done within 90 days. And then only their registration will survive. Because as I said, that from manual they want to go digital. So once at least they will have to accumulate all the requirements.
So the next query is, since FCRA renewal is due by 31st of May, do we have to file renewal of 12A after getting FCRA renewal?
If you are applying after say 31st of May, it is required. But then even ahead of that, if you can now apply, that application will be considered. Subsequently, if you don't have FCRA renewal, then those limitations will come. But as far as charitable institution is concerned, without foreign donations also it can exist. So I think feel that it should immediately apply. As far as FCRA is concerned, it is a different case. Even if there is no FCRA renewal, I don't think that the commissioner will be able to reject it, because without foreign donation also you can function. Only your ability to receive foreign donation will be impaired. So that will once again come once when you are registered for FCRA.
Sir, in case of Section 8 company, how to receive corpus donations from the directors is, as there is no corpus fund, whether share capital will have to be increased?
No, it is not. See, share capital is not necessarily corpus. It is corpus, but then you can also take a letter from them that I am giving this donation for the corpus of the company. And that will come as a corpus, maybe as a reserve fund, if not capital. Or it can come as a corpus fund itself.
Sir, going on to the next question. The trust is required to submit annual accounts of past 3 years. While applying in the month of April or May, it may not be possible that the audited financials of earlier years are available. Is it okay to submit unaudited financials in that case? It appears that no requirements of audited annual accounts as the requirement is for annual accounts. Please guide.
Generally, they have said that audited accounts as are made up. So if they are not made up, then they need not be submitted. And as far as made up is concerned, time limit of 6 months is available to making those accounts and furnishing. So if you are applying within 6 months of close of financial year, I don't see requirement of accounts for that financial year which has concluded next preceding the date of application. So if you are applying after September, it will become mandatory. If you are applying before September, I don't think it will be necessary. Of course, if the commissioner demands unaudited, maybe you can give unaudited.
So the time limit for registration in case of amendment to objects starts from charity commissioner's approval or by application of trust.
No, what happens as far as change in objects of charitable trusts are concerned, they are subject to approval by charity commissioner. So even if resolution is made by the trustees, it will not be operative till they are approved by the charity commissioner. Once they are approved by the charity commissioner, then they become operative, and then within 30 days you can apply to the commissioner of income tax.
Sir, going on to the next query, trust has 12A and 80G. Change report is pending before charity commissioner. It is not likely to receive the order on change report till June due to COVID cases at charity commissioner office Pune. How to apply for re-registration under 12AB in such scenario within 3 months from the month of April?
Now, what happens as far as those objects pending before charity commissioner, the trust cannot pursue because those objects are not validly incorporated into the trust deed. Once the charity commissioner approves, thereafter you can pursue those objects. If you are pursuing those objects without permission of a charity commissioner, then that may be beyond the even Maharashtra Public Charitable Trust Act. So trustees cannot pursue the objects which are not approved by the charity commissioner. So there is no question of making application to commissioner because the trust deed is not amended validly.
Sir, one question which many members have asked, in case the trust has no 12A and 80G registration, can they apply them together in one form as there is only one form now, or are there to be two different forms to be applied for?
No, sorry, both they want to claim 12A and 80G.
80G in one form or should they go for
one form?
Okay.
They have to apply in one form.
Sir, is there any time limit within which the provisional registration should be granted by the department after application for registration in Form 10A by new charitable organization? If no, reply or communication is
within 3 months from the end of the month in which application is made, provisional registration should be given.
Okay. Just a second.
It is there in section 12AB. So I think balance we can keep for group discussion and meeting once again.
Yes, sir. So should we stop the Q&A as of now over here?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Just a second. Yes, thank you very much, sir, for the session and the Q&A. Before concluding the session, we have Ruta ma'am with us, past chairperson of Pune branch. I would like to invite Ruta ma'am for the closing remarks and vote of thanks.
Thank you, Karan.
Yeah, she is also expert in this field.
It was on behalf of all the members of Pune branch. We thank you, CCM sir, for such a wonderful session and an insight into the new forms. I would like to suggest Pune branch to not only have a new session, but also have a kind of help desk, because in the next 3 months, it's going to be difficult to deal with the actual forms when you are filing, because a lot of problems are cropping up while actually filing the form. So, Chitra sir, I request you that if at all we can form a panel of some experts for a ready help desk, or maybe on email, maybe on call, then it will be very useful for all the members. So we solicit your help for the same.
No, if I have to react, see, as far as help desks are concerned, maybe for GST for this purpose, help desk for chartered accountants is welcome, but help desk for assessees is not welcome, because ultimately what happens to GST? In case if the assessee come and keep on asking to the help desk, then how chartered accountants can practice? So if one wants to have help desk, it should be confined to only queries of chartered accountants and not to the public at large. That is my view.
So maybe we can have a help desk email. So if you can, so that
Yes, welcome suggestion, Ruta madam. We will definitely have a help desk for members. Maximum within 1 week, we will start this help desk with the experts panel.
so
I
that
think,
not
Samir, if you want to
Yes.
have help desk, it would be also better to have principal chief commissioner on the help desk. That would give an authoritative answer. We can ask questions to them.
yes.
Okay, we will try, sir.
We can go and meet them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely.
So thank you all the participants for such a wonderful response. I'm sure there will be a lot more questions coming up, and the chairman of the branch would definitely take the initiative to collate all the queries. And
Yes.
also, I also suggest that all these queries should be also sent to all the participants when answered.
Sure, we will send all participants.
Thank you.
Reshma, if you are there, please download all the queries today.
I think if you send it to Ruta, it will come with answers also.
Sure. Okay.
Just a small addition to the announcement. The PPT will be uploaded on puneica.org by Monday, so you all can access it from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ruta ma'am. Thank you, Samir sir and Chitle sir. We conclude this session for the day. Thank you.